Republicans in Tennessee have been highly critical of the finances of Tennessee State University, the state's only public HBCU. The state has given the university some $43 million for operations this year in order to make payroll and prop up the university. Now, 114 people have been laid off at the institution. Now, remember, they also replaced the Board of Trustees last year. We were there in Nashville discussing that. The interim president, Dr. Ronald Johnson, he says the fault lies with former president, Dr. Glenda Glover. He says that repeated poor decisions and the lack of checks and balances are why the university is financially strapped. Well, Dr. Glenda Glover reached out to us and she said, I would love to come on the show to discuss this. And so she joins us right now on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Dr. Glover, glad to have you here. So first of all, let's walk through. You retired as president from the university. I've had some alumni, folks have been on my social media saying, oh, why is she taking $800,000 in as a consultant for the university? So first, can you explain that?
Thank you, and good evening, and thank you for having me on the show tonight. Yes, I can explain that. I mean, just this whole notion of $800,000 is so ridiculous. I have a retirement agreement. It's a buyout agreement. It represents the value of the remainder of the years on my contract. I was in year one of a 5-year contract. And so I was asked to identify donors, to continue to work with the university and raising money. As you know, we built an endowment from $46 million to over $100 million. We're the envy of many HBCUs with our endowment. But set that aside. When the legislators carefully constructed an arrangement with me, when legislators, some met with me in person and some sent others to meet with me to speed up the retirement process. In fact, to ask me to retire. So I said I would do it on my own terms, at my own time. And so I did honor their request and retire. So, but now you don't get to come to me now and say, we want your retirement agreement now to be voided. That's just not a fair process because it happens in academia all the time. When a president leaves early, they get an exit package, they get a retirement package, they get a buyout package. It's not only just in academia, it's in other areas. Coaches and others get buyout packages. And so that's no different from that. There's no $800,000 arrangement I have to consult with TSU, but that's just ridiculous.
All right. So you have a buyout, and that is being paid to you over what period of time?
It's set up to be over a 4-year period. There are different arrangements being made over a 4-year period.
And are you required to do additional things as a result of that buyout?
I am. Now, I suggested the 4-year period so that it wouldn't be such a strain on the university's treasury. And so, and for that, I would continue to identify new donors, continue to build the endowment, to bring it. I'm going to the East Coast after Thanksgiving to meet with some individuals about some money for TSU. And so it's those kinds of things that, that's what my skill set is. And they did not want that to go to waste upon my retirement. In fact, that was suggested to me by one of the legislators. And so that's why it was such a shock when they were acting like they didn't know anything about it, because they were the very ones who came to me and said, you've been here a long time, you should consider retirement. And they suggested some things to put into the retirement package. So this hypocrisy is just unreal.
Okay, so let's talk about where the university is right now. You have your interim president who's saying all of these financial issues with Tennessee State are your fault and your previous administration and the previous board. You have state legislators who are also blaming you. You got columnists with the Nashville Tennessean who are saying this is, one of them even said that that by you being on the board of a for-profit prison is also part of this problem. And so let's talk about this here. Where the university is right now, what is the reason for the university's financial problems, in your estimation?
Well, let me start by saying this. The state will not get the chance. They don't have the chance to cause a problem and then criticize us for having to go through the problem. So again, it's almost like a friend who you have loaned money to, and that person comes by. That friend owes you money, and that person comes back and makes fun of you because you're broke. So they can't cause a problem and then come back and criticize us because we're in a problem that they created. Now, having said that, they say, yes, they owe us money. Yes, there's a $2.1 billion underfunding letter that's been written to the governor. But let's put that aside. There's a $544 million underfunded amount that the state has admitted that that's the amount that TSU has been underfunded by. That's not a number that's made up. That came from their internal processes, their own analytics, their own budget analysts who put that number together and said, here's what we have. 544 million. When you compare it to the other land grant institution, the equitable funding model that they developed shows that we owe Tennessee State University 544 million, and that's the underfunding amount. But having said that, I'm not even going to discuss that as that, because that's not what's in our budget. What's in our budget is how we operate from semester to semester is through students paying their tuition and fees. That's where that's where it comes from. Students pay tuition and fees. That's probably 75% of our budget. I think another 23% comes from the state. But you can see our bread and butter, recruiting students paying their money. They come to school and they go to TSU. But there are two things that I want to bring out. How do we get here? Number one, everybody's talking about reserves, and everybody's talking about that. When you talk about a school, only at the Capitol have they found something called reserves they want to talk about. What's really, when you want to make a decision to go to school, it's about what programs you have, what's your endowment. And by the way, TSU has a health endowment of over $100 million in endowment. We're one of a handful of schools. So no school is broke that has an endowment of over $100 million. We do have a cash flow problem that have to be addressed. And I have to say that. But here's what has happened. Number one, how do we start? The Tennessee Higher Education Commission, THEC, has a process whereby they have schools to give students, to put scholarships on the student's account, the HOPE scholarships, the lottery scholarships that are state funded, not the ones that the schools offer. These are ones that are offered by the state. And there are a lot of students from a lot of the universities getting these scholarships. Well, rather than all of those students going to the Higher Education Commission, THEC, asking them for the scholarship money in that process, it's worked out so that each school will advance the money to the students. Again, totally separate from the $2.1 billion, totally separate from the $544 million. They would advance this money to the students. TSU did from our operating funds. And then THEC, Tennessee Higher Education Commission, would then reimburse TSU at some point. Well, after we had done this reimbursement and waiting for us to get after we had done this advancement, waiting for our reimbursement, they informed us they're not going to reimburse us. We said, what do you mean? This came from our operations. And they said, well, we're not going to reimburse you because you got some audit findings from TSAC. We want you to get those cleared first. Now, there was almost an impossibility to get those cleared first because we had students who needed transcripts. They had not been, the final transcript was not there. There were a lot of things that couldn't be done overnight. So we thought that was very, very critical. So we just sent them letters, literally begging them to pay us the money. That's number one. Another thing that happened, that went through our operating account. The state forced TSU to hire a company, JLL. And they're a good company. I even know one of the guys at the tip top, and they're a good company. However, it was being done much less funds in-house. But they forced them to come in to do our facilities and maintenance because they had put $250,000 away. But the catch is, it couldn't come out of $250 $250,000 they gave us. It had to, it was a million. I'm sorry, 250 million. It couldn't come out of that. It had to come out of our operations. So that's a tune of $1.2 million per month that they forced us to pay. I mean, I hope you're listening. I hope the audience hears that. $1.2 million per month. And what is so startling about this is that they will not allow TSU to have an RFP process. There was no bid process. We couldn't do due diligence on it. You take it or leave it. Those were the words given to us on the phone. And I was not the only one on the phone that day. That either you take JLL or we don't have a deal. And so we took them to manage the property and do things at TSU. And that's a big price tag, $1.2 million a month. And so that hurt last semester. Now this semester is a different story. This semester, we don't have funds because the students are not there. We don't have funds this fall semester. It has nothing to do with our reserves, because that's for emergencies. We wanted those funds to help some operations, yes. But this fall, we're down by 1,900 students. Now that equates to almost about $20 million. You can't operate a school asking the state to bail you out because we don't have the students paying their fees. We don't have students here to pay. And so I don't understand why the state won't put that narrative out front and say enrollment is down, therefore the revenue is down.
So I'm reading this article here, and it said that in fiscal 2023, the university logged $45.9 million in institutional aid, which includes tuition discounts, a massive increase from $8.6 million the year before. Other students found themselves without a scholarship once federal funds ran out. Then this is from highereddive.com. It said enrollment faltered because of broken promises. First-year student enrollment at around 3,500 in fiscal year 2022, roughly half the next year, and hit 880 students by 2024. So what was happening? So what was going on there with these tuition discounts? So what is the reason to go from, how do you go from 3,500 first-year students in 2022 to 880 in 2024? How does that happen?
Okay, let's go back. The allegation is that we used the one-time funds. I think that's what I heard you say. Those were COVID dollars. When they had, when COVID was there, they had the HERF dollars, and sometimes referred to, it's a federal stimulus package that was given to HBCU, but to all universities, especially, and there's a special package for HBCUs. That was in 2020, and some in 2021. Those students have already graduated. We couldn't have made a promise to a student from the COVID funds from 4 years ago to in 2020 when COVID was there. It was March of 2020. By the time they got the registration together, we had students, and we didn't give scholarships out of that fund. That money was used to pay off student balances. They could come back to school and to help them through the COVID factors, like parents losing their jobs, students losing their jobs, companies shutting down that had promised students money for a school, students not having connectivity, all the COVID woes. That's what that funding was for. So that was 4 years ago. So that couldn't have been what they were talking about. But I think what they may be talking about, because I listened to it too, is that in 2022, we had a huge influx of students because we were coming back from COVID. Parents were calling us saying, listen, they've been here for all this time, a year. We need you all to do something to help us. And it wasn't just Tennessee State. It was around the country when students were going back to school in large numbers. But TSU was chosen for a lot of reasons. One, we have good programs. They know they get a quality education. That's the number one reason you go to an HBCU is to get a quality education. Everything else is gravy. But when the students watched, they saw a lot of things happening. Kamala Harris, it was our vice president, the vice president of the United States, came for our commission as speaker. Our band was nominated for 2 Grammys. They had not received them then. They since received the Grammys. They had performed at the White House on the Rose Bowl parade. So a lot of things were happening. Teachers on a national stage. And we were all having fun with it, just having a good time with it. And we didn't have this crisis because the students came to TSU. Yes, we had a housing problem because there was not enough housing on campus anyway. And then there were students who couldn't afford to live in Nashville off campus because the housing prices are cost prohibitive. So they're asked to come back on campus too. So just like other schools in the United States, HBCUs and non-HBCUs, we house students in hotels. Yes, that was expensive, and that did take up some of the money that we had. But we got funding from those students, money from those students. They came into TSU. We have that's not coming in now. So whatever the reason was, 2022 is gone now because that's the time they said you don't have enough students before that. So when these students came, then they got on to having too many students. Remember when the legislator got on TV and said, you have too many students. Why are all these students coming to TSU? You're doing them a disservice by having so many students. So they want to cut the number of students down to make housing the number one factor. So the next year we said, okay, let's keep the temperature down. We'll have 8,000. So we had 8,200 last fall, or 8,197. So in this fall, it dropped to we're about 6,300 students. So that's not even typical of a TSU first year class of 800 students. There's what promise was made to these 800 students? Nobody promised them any scholarships because there was no scholarship funding to promise them. So for them to say that these students couldn't return or they couldn't come this first year because they had a scholarship promise that didn't happen, they were in high school at the time, and there was no promise made to these 800 students. So I don't know where that came from. There is a sensation in saying that something that was promised and not given. That's just simply not true. But there may be some things that slip through the cracks.
So you're saying that the main issue here is that by having that drastic of a drop of first year students, and what people have to understand is that HBCUs largely depend upon the financial aid of students. So by having that drop, that's $20 million not coming into the university. Therefore, you're going to have a shortfall. Now, I know earlier you also said let's set aside what they owe, but isn't that part of the problem? If the state owes Tennessee State more than $500 million, and then and again, the $500 million the state owes them is separate from that $2.1 billion that the federal government say they've been underfunded. So really Tennessee State is owed about $2.6 billion.
Yes, precisely. That is correct. The point I was making is they've always owed us money, and we've managed by semester to semester with the students that come in and register. You have to understand the bread and butter of the higher education is students coming in, paying their tuition fees, and the students and the university operating from that. Now, aside from that, the university is expecting to receive the funds that's been owed by the state, especially first the $544 million that their own budget analyst said was owed, and it was reviewed by his superiors that is owed. So that's expected. They did put $250 million up front, but then they tied our hands so it couldn't be used. They put $250 million providing the governor's budget, but then there was so much red tape. There are so many agencies to sign off on it, and so many things to be done and approvals that we haven't used, but maybe it's just a minuscule part of it. And so in essence, they owe us still the $544 million. And honestly, part of that was supposed to be a part of the second allotment that we were supposed to get, was supposed to be used for some of the operations. And we were going to use some of that for scholarships, but that didn't happen. They reneged on their promise. So we got the $250 and we were supposed to get more after we got the $250 and showed how we were going to use that, and we did. And then when it came time for another allotment of that $544 million, it just didn't happen. And so, yes, we depend on that, but we absolutely depend on the money from the state. The 23% they give us, we need that. But what I'm saying is, we need the $544 million also. And what we don't need them to do is play down the fact that enrollment is down. Enrollment being down by 1,900 students, that's, $20 million just for one semester alone. That is significant for the operations of the university. With payroll being $8 million a month, or $8.5 million a month. I heard a number that was maybe twice that, but I can't speak to that because I know what it was when I was there in June. it was eight and a half million a month was payroll. And so just that 20 million was almost the whole semester's payroll. What I'm saying is the state can't get away with bad mouthing TSU to the point that students are deciding to go other places. Students, we know why students didn't come back the fall. We know why it's down. There's some, it's on Tennessee State's part too, because our biggest months are June, July, and August. There's been more we could have done or should have done to get more students in. But be that as it may, what the state did is unconscionable. They created an environment that was so bad that students didn't want to come to TSU. I know because I'm in the street with them, on the ground with them. I'm in Memphis recruiting, in Nashville recruiting, up in East Tennessee recruiting. And students are saying, we don't think, they were afraid that we were going to lose our HBCU brand because of all the chaos. We said, we're going to put you in the community college system. Parents will listen to that. Parents, I feel more phone calls from that very moment of saying, why don't we put TSU in the community college system? They thought they would just become a community college. They thought somebody's going to take us over. There was too much uncertainty among so many students that really contributed to our enrollment decline. Now, the state won't admit that because in their minds, that's not the problem. But they're not talking to students. We're talking to students. We're getting answers from students. Students are telling us what is going on in their minds, in their families, in their churches. And they're saying, stay away from Tennessee State until they get it together. They're about to have a state takeover. Those are the things as parents are saying as to why they're sending students to other places.
Well, what do you make of the state controller, Jason Munpower, trying to get Tennessee State to sell its Avon Williams campus downtown Nashville? He's saying it could net the university some $40 to $50 million. Some are saying, oh, this is these Republicans trying to get their hands on valuable HBCU land.
I just shook my head. I have to let him work it out with the current president. You know, I just won't give my opinion. They just have to work through that one themselves.
Do you accept any blame for what's going on here? Was there anything that could have been done differently, that should have been done differently? You said that y'all could have done a better job when it came to recruiting students. Is there anything that should have been done differently under your watch the last 3 to 4 years at Tennessee State?
Well, we were fine in 3 to 4 years. We've been fine for the last, I was there for 11 and a half years. And initially, I could do no wrong. They labeled all degrees. They talked about me. They loved Glenda Glover. It wasn't until Glenda Glover challenged that system of discrimination against Tennessee State University. That's when it all started. When I looked him dead in the eye and said, when you say challenge the system, do you mean saying send us that $500 million? Yes. At that time, we didn't know how much it was. But we know it was something. We had done some preliminary numbers ourselves, and we had come up with different sets of numbers. But it was enough to present to them to get legislators together, 1 or 2 legislators together, and I won't call their names tonight, and go with me to the governor to meet with the then governor, who was really surprised. And I believe he was honest and he said he was surprised, didn't know that we were not being funded, we were not being matched, our funding. And that was the first thing we had to do, was bring to their attention. Presidents have to be courageous enough to tell the truth, you know, because there's so much that they're saying that's just so not true, because the truth doesn't care whose mouth it comes out of. So I said, there'll be some casualties. Some presidents will be casualties. I'm one, but I don't take that back. You know, they're saying to me, you know, sometimes at some point, we just got to stop blaming the state. I said, what do you mean? The state has blamed itself. They did the study. I didn't. That said, we owe you $544 million. The state is the one that said, go into your reserve funds and operate for a moment because we're not going to pay you the money we owe you. It's the state that said, pay this firm $1.2 million per month, not per year, per month, to run this $250 million that we're giving you. And you have a choice in it. You either do it or you're not getting any more money to do another project we had. So There was that kind of cruelty and this kind of hypocrisy that has to be addressed. And so now that I'm not president, I can address it. I got my First Amendment rights back. And so that's where we are with this.
Last question for you. Is it insulting to hear the interim president and others say that you mismanage resources when you are a certified public accountant? They are laying it out as if you had no clue how to manage money.
I know the interim president. I've known him for a number of years. He and I have been friends. I spoke at his inauguration when he became president of Clark Atlanta. So I won't say anything ugly about the interim president. I know him. I know his wife. And so, yes, it's hurtful because it's like growing up in a poor home like I did. When you watch your mother and father take what little money they had and pay all the bills that were on the table. That's what we have to do because the state has ignored TSU. They pretend like they want what's best for TSU, but yet right now they do so many distractions. This is just a distraction from the money they owe. They don't care about this agreement I have, my retirement agreement. They don't care about the fact that there are no students there right now. In fact, I think they like that because now it's like we're so dependent on you to give us the money. They're saying we're going to advance you $43 million. What are you talking about advance? You owe us money. If you're going to do anything, take out the funds you owe us. Somebody has to tell the truth, And so when they say that, that's the part that is so unfortunate that they will not speak the truth. They rather create distractions and talk about other things rather than say, we did not fund TSU properly. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to remove this restriction of this $250 million. It's already in the budget. It's already there, already voted on and ready to go. We're going to remove that infrastructure restriction and let you use the money for operations rather than say, we're going to do this, you cut this. And then one lawmaker said, officer said, we're going to tear it down to the core and build it back up again. What do you mean you're going to tear TSU down and build it back up? Now, that was an outrageous statement. I mean, it makes your blood crawl to hear somebody say that. Somebody has a BS degree who knows nothing about higher education, advanced education. That was so insulting to me. That's what's insulting. Talking about me doesn't really matter that much because I trust God. I know He'll take care of all this. I trust God. I know that when I went to them and told them, you have to pay us the money you owe us. It's like the story of Jesus. And I'm not comparing myself to Jesus in any way. But as long as He went about saying, I'm the Son of God. I came to save the world. Oh, they said he's crazy. Let him go. But the moment he challenged that Roman establishment, they said, he has to go. And that's the situation I find myself in. It was fine until we told them, you owe us money and you have to pay us the money you owe us. You have to pay up. And that's when everybody started coming after Glenda Glover. And so, but I'm used to a fight. I was born to fight. I grew up in a civil rights home. I watched my dad fight in the civil rights movement. And so I was born for a fight like this. If it's fight for my university that I'm passionate about, that I love for the students, I fight for the students all day, every day. And so that's what I say. I'm happy to be a part of the TSU family. I'm happy to be a TSU alum so that I can join in that fight to get the money that they owe TSU, to get rid of this doggone distraction that they're talking about just so they can keep TSU and have a way to say that they're not doing this. No, we don't have funds this semester, but it's not because of what I did. It's what the students didn't come back. We could have done a little bit better in June, July, and August. That's our biggest months to follow up with the students, to do more follow up with them, to say to them, we're not here. We know you haven't registered, you haven't returned to school. But don't put down scholarships. They didn't get their scholarship. That was 4 years ago. And even this first year, 800 students, that's nothing to do with scholarships. That's just to say that we have 800 students because they were promised scholarships. How many were promised scholarships? Who? Give me their names so we can look it up and see. That's just simply not true. That's a red herring. That's a distraction. And that's what this General Assembly is doing, where the key leaders, key folk are talking, they come up with distractions. And they love having me as a distraction. And but I can clear up my distraction because I got an agreement. I have an agreement that says you have 4 years left on your contract. So if you want me out of there, they were giving me the suggestions on how to do it. That's what's so hypocritical about it. But that's okay. I'm just happy to be here so we could talk through it. And you can see that. And by the way, we did leave all the money was not spent. They said, somebody said all the money was spent. There was close to $9 or $10 million left in the reserve fund, and that I'm sure about. And so that's what I'm saying. There are so many mistruths and non-truths that come out, but that's how it is when they're fighting a battle and trying to win a case that is just, well, there is no case. So look, before we hang up,
All right.
let me say hello to my good friend and the best attorney I've ever come in contact with, A. Scott Bolden. I'm happy always to share a show with him, a moment with him, because he is by far the best that you can encounter, that one could encounter.
Oh, Lord, I don't even know if our television is wide enough to fit his head into the screen now. Dr. Glover, we certainly appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you help build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation A crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.